I'd like to call the Development Review Board to order, February 6, 2018.
Okay, the first item on our agenda are the minutes from our last meeting, if we can all recall that long ago, but November 21, 2017.
Anything? Any changes, additions? Sorry.
Move to approve.
Move to approve. All seconds? I knew you were going to do that. All in favor?
I abstain.
Okay, one abstention.
Next item on our agenda is the witness oath. And we ask everybody who speaks to the board this evening to sign the sign-up sheet on the podium over there. It includes the following oath statement. I solemnly swear or affirm under the pains and penalty of perjury, the statements I make, testimony I give, and other evidence I submit to the board at the board's public hearing held on this date shall be true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. And, folks have already signed in, so they're all set. First hearing on our agenda, actually the one and only hearing tonight, is Phytoscience Institute, LLC, at 120 Depot Street. This applicant is seeking approval for a medical cannabis dispensary in a portion of the existing building at 120 Depot Street. The application review panel did meet with the applicant yesterday and discussed the application, and they asked that the applicant present to the full board this evening. And I see that Paul Carocchio is here representing the applicant.
Thanks, Dan. My name is Paul Carocchio. I'm here on behalf of the Phytoscience Institute, LLC, which is based up north Vermont near Waterbury. And Willie Katz-Burrill and myself met yesterday with two members of your review committee, and we answered a bunch of questions over the course of a half hour. And what I have brought with me today, which I thought might be helpful, is some visuals of the existing dispensary that's in Montpelier on River Street. So I'll hand those out to you now, and then as I present what's planned, you can look through these if that's all right.
Sounds great. Thank you.
So I left them loose, so you can just look through. So yesterday at the review session, we explained that Phytoscience plans to open a medical cannabis dispensary at 120 Depot Street in the former DMV space. It's a multi-retail shopping mall where there's an appliance store, a health fitness store, and a dollar store. And we hope to have it open on March 1st. That's ambitious. There is also the plans, although not required to be at the Development Review Board level, plan to open a retail non-cannabis but homeopathic, we're calling it an apothecary in the front, but it's really a retail operation in about 800 square feet, where there would be sale of homeopathic creams like aloe and hemp-based products, etc. So the medical cannabis dispensary would be in the back portion of that DMV space, and we would actually isolate it through a breezeway, allowing customers to come in from a main front door that would go through to the back to the dispensary, or in the front they can go into the retail space. The dispensary is heavily regulated. There's a lot of security, surveillance. It's also on an appointment basis, so I would assimilate it to a medical office where you might make an appointment with a dentist to go. We anticipate having a handful of patients a day, and they would have if they're a patient seeking medical cannabis, they would already have gotten a medical cannabis card from a qualified medical professional, a doctor, in the state of Vermont. And they would also, through that process with the doctor, they would have already been diagnosed with a an ailment that is already on a list that the State Department of Health has pre-approved, and the list is not that long. They would also have had to have 6 months prior symptoms and with experience with a medical professional before receiving the medical card. So the facility, the phytoscience group has received and been awarded 2 licenses to sell medical cannabis in the state of Vermont, which allows them to have 2 dispensaries per license. So this will be, as you probably know, Bennington is a site that the State Department of Health felt was underserved, and there are a number of patients in the state that travel to receive their treatment. And in Bennington, there were enough patients identified by the Department of Health that they were driving to Brandon, which is more than the 40 or 45-minute drive that the Department of Health would like to have the patients stay within. And then there's a dispensary in Brattleboro. So they focused on Bennington as the target site for this year and awarded Phytoscience the license amongst other applicants. So they also gave Phytoscience a deadline to have their dispensary open by, and the plan is to convert that space fairly quickly. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have. As far as we're concerned, it's a medical office, appointment based only. The hours will be open based on the appointment amount of appointments. It's a during the day operation, and right now it's flexible enough that the appointments could be scheduled to accommodate traffic and parking of the other operations in that facility. Last night or yesterday, we heard from Charlie that he goes to the health center and that it's fairly busy after 4 o'clock. And Willie and I discussed that maybe the dispensary could be open and the appointments could be consolidated into a period where that traffic wouldn't be creating a congestion. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about 5 to 8 patients a day, and the visits being 10 to 15 minutes long each.
Any questions? Yes, Barry.
Yesterday, we got some information on cultivation. You want to just touch on that briefly for the board?
Sure. So the license comes with a permit to cultivate cannabis, and currently Phytoscience uses a facility on River Street in Montpelier, which is a facility for indoor cultivation, and then also they have a dispensary in the front, and that's the one you're looking at here. So the photos we've taken are of the actual dispensary. You'll notice that it's very discreet. It's a professional facility, and as you go through the photos, it's basically like you're walking through the door. You'll see a breezeway that then has a secure door on the other side where you would show your ID. You ring the doorbell, show your ID. Is that right? There we go. And so the cultivation is occurring there. As demand increases, they would expand their cultivation, although the demand is not significant at this point.
And just to add to that, I understand that cultivation is controlled by the state of Vermont and it is licensed by the state of Vermont.
It's highly regulated by the state of Vermont, and in fact, the FBI requires that anybody that's involved in the organization is fingerprinted and a profile is made on those people involved, even at the retail level.
But Paul, just to clarify, there's no plan for any cultivation here in the Bennington location?
No, yes.
I don't know if that was clear to everybody.
Good question, yeah. No.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, okay, so you're not going to be cultivating that?
Zero
Oh,
cultivation.
okay.
And I should clarify, because
Or then in the morning, I wonder about that.
that's a good question. So it came up yesterday. The form of the product has evolved into what maybe in the last 30 years would have been perceived as a plant that is smoked. It's now converted from the plant form into an oil extract, which is then combined with other oils like coconut oil, and then it's put in as an oil under your tongue, or it's taken as a gel, like an Advil gel cap pill, or people use creams. So the largest sort of concentration of patients are mostly patients with chronic arthritis, joint pain, and then also cancer patients. So those are the two predominant patients that are diagnosed either with arthritis or cancer.
Yes, Barry.
One more. I've wondered this ever since this came about here months ago. Why is there a standalone store for this? Like prescription drugs are dispensed through a pharmacy and so forth. Why isn't this dispensed through a pharmacy?
That's a great question. It's probably based on the fact that most of our pharmacies are national firms, and this is a state-based regulatory issue. It's not allowed federally. So most, unless you open a pharmacy, you'd have to have inside the pharmacy a secure dispensary. And frankly, the amount of patients is unknown. So just to give you an order of magnitude, nobody really knows how many of the Bennington County patients will actually come to this dispensary. They do go to the Brandon and Brattleboro dispensaries, but we don't know if they'll actually come to the Bennington one. The Montpelier dispensary, the one you're looking at, has 1,200 registered patients. So 250 operating days a year. They have about 5 visits a day. Or it's probably more like a dozen visits a day through the week.
So is my understanding correct then that you can't do it through a dispensary because it's still against the law federally to have possess or sell marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it, and that's why you can't do it through a dispensary because it's against the law federally.
Well, the recreational use is allowed this summer, which allows people individually in their home to grow, cultivate, and possess.
Just in Vermont, that's all.
In Vermont, and there are other states too.
Yeah, I know, there's some
but
others
not commercially sold, where it is allowed in other states commercially. So this is strictly a medical purpose. So if you were to go to your general physician, they could, if you have one of these ailments that's in the list and it's published, they could diagnose you with the ailment and then in 6 months offer you a medical marijuana or a medical cannabis card, but you would also, I believe, have to get it confirmed by another physician in the state, independent.
I got one more for Dan. So we're not acting on the bottom of this, I mentioned the separate space for an apothecary, so on and so forth. We're not acting on that tonight, are we? It's not warned.
Yeah, I don't believe it's necessary because it's a retail store, and retail stores are allowed in that particular zone without any question.
So it is a retail store.
I think that's the question. Is it a retail store? Is it a pharmacy? Is it a medical clinic? I think could be any one of those, and they're all allowed in that zone, but I think that there's enough of a question of where it fits in that it's appropriate for the board to.
But the change of use, if I do put this retail store in there, it is a change of use in the DMV.
Yes.
And I thought they had to come before this board for change of use.
Not if there's not an impact in, without if there's not a change in a greater demand on parking, and the parking is actually the same.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
No one else?
I'll forget that tomorrow, but now I know.
Oh, you know how often, well, let's say, downtown, unfortunately, stores do turn over.
Right.
And they don't come in every time. There's a
That's right,
change from an
exactly.
office to a retail
Gotcha.
to a retail.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks, Dan.
Anyone else? Charles? Anyone out there? A question? That's my pleasure, Barry.
I'll move to close the hearing and move to deliberative session.
Okay. Second. Okay. All in favor?
So Paul, the board will deliberate this evening, and give me a shout in the morning. I can give you an advance about what the written decision will be.
Great, thank you. Do you deliberate in public?
No, it's a closed deliberation.
Mind if I wait?
Sure, if you want to wait, yeah. We have one other item, and then we'll deliberate, and then you grab me on the way out.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we do have some other business this evening. This is the second time that Frank Perrin has been here to talk to us about revisions to the Carbone Honda Toyota plan to address some concerns about parking in landscaped areas. And Frank has submitted a revised plan. And Frank, I'll let you walk the board through the plan, and we can see if we can get this approved this evening.
Thank you. So, right, as Dan mentioned, last time I came in, we had added some additional fencing along the front proposed parking lot. And do you guys have this small blown-up plan? I'm just going to come closer because it's probably easier. So on the big plan, last time we were in, we had added some black rail fencing in front of the new building, in front of the existing building. But the concern was, I guess they load up vehicles here for display on weekends. So we've got now proposed at the main entrance, probably easier to see now on the small plan. A low single rail, split rail fence that goes around, wraps around the entrance on both sides. It would be either a low 1.5 off the ground, either a single rail, split rail fence, or perhaps a low pressure treated post, something that is low so that it's not affecting the visibility into the property, but is a physical barrier to stop them from parking in front, once and for all, hopefully. So that's it. That's what we've added since last time.
If you folks feel comfortable with that, it would be appropriate to approve it, or if you have additional questions.
I've got, I want to ask you once again, what is the greenery that's planted along the shrubs or whatever that's planted along there? What are those?
So this line of trees here,
Yes, the ones.
those are all the existing plantings that are there now. In that section, we haven't added any new plants in because it's fairly well grown up when they put the dealership in, whenever that was, 15 years ago. So those are mature, I think maples.
Locust, yeah. Mature locust, I
locust.
believe.
And then a number of small, 2-foot high shrubs.
That's what I was interested in, the small shrubs, what they're going to be. About 2 foot high, did you say?
Yeah, and those are there now.
Yeah, the plantings directly adjacent to the street have been in existence for quite some time.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I thought I wanted to add a picture of those there, so.
Again, I'll move to close the questionnaire and move to the
Okay.
deliberative sessions.
Charles seconds it. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great night.
All right, unless there's any other business, it'd be appropriate to adjourn the hearing, and we'll continue with we'll start with the deliberative session. Once the hearing, the meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Charles? Charles seconds. All in favor?
Please leave.